Come with me, and you will be in a world of pure imagination. Sort of. I'm Adam. This is Does It Hold Up? And join me as we talk about this last weekend's box office. As always, we start with what were the top 10 movies over this last weekend. In first place, it's no surprise, it's Wonka, taking in just over $39 million in its debut weekend. In second place, in its fifth week, is Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, with another $5.8 million, only a 37% drop. It's brought in $145.2 million so far. In third place is The Boy and the Heron in just its second week, with another $5.5 million, a 58% drop, but it's got a pretty healthy number of $23.5 million at the domestic box office. In fourth place is Godzilla -1 in its third week, with just over $5 million, 41% drop, but it's got a respectable number, $34.4 million, and when the budget on that movie was just about $15 million, it's doing pretty well. In fifth place in its fifth week is Trolls Band Together, with $3.9 million and a 35% drop. In sixth place in its fourth week is Disney's Wish, with $3.1 million, a 40% drop, and it is struggling. I know it's still in the top 10 in its fourth week, but it's not taking in that much. Luckily, it's not a very heavy box office right now with a lot of big movies. That might be the only reason this one's staying in it, because it's only made $54 million so far. That's probably not what Disney wanted to see. In seventh place, new to the list, is Christmas with the Chosen, Holy Night, with $2,925,000. So far, it's brought in $4.6 million, and that's pretty good for a Fathom event, something that's only going to play for a short period of time. In eighth place is Napoleon in its fourth week, with $2.2 million and a 45% drop. Renaissance, a film by Beyonce, is in ninth place in its third week, with a big drop of 65% to bring in only $1.9 million. We're going to check back in with that just a little bit later. And rounding out the top 10 is Poor Things in its second week, taking in $1,282,208 for a 94% increase over last week when it was only in 9 theaters. What's impressive about this movie is it jumped into the top 10 this week, even though it is only currently in 82 theaters. I'm not sure if that's really impressive for Poor Things, or shows how badly all the other movies that are currently released are doing when they're in many more theaters. We had 3 movies fall out of the top 10 this week: Waitress the Musical after just 1 week, Animal after 2 weeks, and also The Shift after just 2 weeks. Wonka was the big movie everybody was talking about over the weekend. It's something people have been looking forward to, or maybe not looking forward to, since the trailers first dropped many months ago. Timothée Chalamet plays a young Willy Wonka, and it's kind of the story of how he became that eccentric old man from the 1971 version starring Gene Wilder. I'm not going to do a full review here, but I did check it out. Hopefully we'll have a review out sometime this week for you guys. And let's just say it is not that good of a movie, and with only a $39 million opening, it looks like many other people agreed with me. Now, this might be a movie that has legs and people will continue to go see it, but we won't know that until further on down the road. As of right now, I'm not saying it is a failure, but I am saying it's not looking very good. But I did want to compare it to the other 2 versions of Wonka that we've had in the past with theatrical releases. So if we go all the way back to 1971, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory came out with, I don't know its opening weekend, couldn't find it anywhere, but I did find that its total gross back then was only $4 million, which for a beloved classic that I think many people still enjoy to this day and tout as probably the epitome of this story, $4 million is not a lot. It did get re-released in 1996, and that's when it got the biggest following that it's ever had, and why I think a lot of people still love it today. Back in 2005, Tim Burton and Johnny Depp put out Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, a more faithful adaptation of the book. Its opening weekend, it made $56.1 million, went on to have a total domestic gross of $206.5 million. I don't know if Wonka is going to be able to, obviously it's already beaten Willy Wonka, but I don't know if it's going to be able to meet Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. We're just going to have to find out. But we couldn't leave it there. We did have to adjust to see what it's actually up against. And those numbers look like 1971's Willy Wonka. Again, no opening weekend, but its total gross adjusted for inflation is $25.5 million. Wonka's already beaten that, but not by that much. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory from 2005, adjusted for inflation, opening weekend, $92.2 million. So you can see that Wonka fell very short of that number. And the total adjusted gross for that 2005 movie comes out to $339.1 million. Wonka's got a lot of work to do if it wants to meet that number. And I'm just not sure it's going to get there. It's a fine kids movie, but it's not something I think a lot of people are going to go see on repeat, especially when we have a big movie coming out this weekend that we'll talk about at the end of the show. Yorgos Lanthimos' new movie, Poor Things, is in theaters. Like I said, only 82 though, and yet it still broke into the top 10. And this might be his most successful movie through just 2 weeks so far. But I wanted to go back and look. Last week it came out in just 9 theaters, made $661,000. So I wanted to take a look at all the opening weekends for Yorgos Lanthimos movies since he started getting his scene in theaters. So it actually worked out pretty well because his movies actually go in order from lowest grossing to highest grossing, his first movie to his most recent movie. All the way back in 2012, he released a movie called Alps, which in its opening weekend only made $2,628. Then in 2016, he released The Lobster, one of my favorite black comedy movies. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor, check it out. And it made $50,003 in its opening weekend. Followed it up in 2017 with The Killing of a Sacred Deer with $115,120 in its opening weekend. 2018, a movie that was nominated for Oscars and actually won Best Actress Oscar for Olivia Colman, The Favorite. In its opening weekend, took in $422,410. And then to round out his list, you have Poor Things from this year, which just took in $661,230 last weekend when it was in very limited release. But once again, we can't leave it there. We will adjust for inflation to kind of see where everything sits. The movies stay in exactly the same order. And The Alps from 2012 has an adjusted inflation of $3,476. The Lobster, $60,871. The Killing of a Sacred Deer, $135,000. The Favorite adjusts to $488,000, and Poor Things has that $661,000. As you can see, his movies have been growing every time he releases a new one. His highest grossing one to date is The Favorite from 2018, making over $30 million at the domestic box office. Will Poor Things get there? I'm not 100% sure. It's got mediocre word of mouth. It's kind of losing steam in Oscar races, but I do feel like it's going to get nominated for at least 1 or 2 Academy Awards, which will spark a re-interest in the movie when that rolls around. So even if it doesn't hit that 30 plus million in its initial run, during its second run, it might actually get there. And the last thing I want to check in on is the Beyonce versus Taylor Swift thing that we've been going on about every week since Beyonce released Renaissance back on December 1st. This is probably going to be the last time we check in with this chart because I don't know if Beyonce is going to stay in the top 10 this coming weekend. But if we look at their week 3 numbers, Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, had a grand total of $150 million in its third week, and Renaissance, a film by Beyonce, is sitting at that $30.8 million. Taylor Swift made about 5 times as much as Renaissance did in the same amount of time. And I don't really know what that says about each one of these movies, but it does say at least one thing. Beyonce hasn't really made her movie an event like the Eras Tour was, and it could be why we're seeing less and less people come out for this movie. Not saying it's a bad movie, just saying that The reason some movies like the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Barbie, and Taylor Swift The Eras Tour made so much money comparative to what people thought they would make is because it became an event. You dress up, you get a big group together, you go. I'm not sure Renaissance is doing that and drawing in the same kind of crowds. And we'll finish up by looking at 2 movies that are coming out this weekend. The first one being Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Aquaman returns in this sequel movie where he has to once again protect Atlantis from Black Manta while also planning his wedding? This movie stars Jason Momoa, Patrick Wilson, Nicole Kidman, and Ben Affleck, who's one of the top billed stars on this movie. I'm confused here. Are they resetting the DC universe or are they not? It is directed by James Wan, returning after he directed the first Aquaman movie, so you know at least it'll be of high quality. Comes out this Friday, December 22nd in theaters. The second movie to look out for this weekend is The Iron Claw. It's the true story of the Von Erich wrestling family and their rise to stardom before their tragic fall. If you don't know this story, I advise you to go into this one cold. It's a very interesting story with a lot of ups and a lot of downs, but it is worth knowing. It stars Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dixon, Maura Tierney, and Holt McElhaney. It's directed by Sean Durkin. It also comes into theaters this Friday. That's the one I'm more looking forward to, but I don't know how many other people are. So let me know in the comments below which movie you're looking forward to this weekend. Is it Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Is it The Iron Claw? Or is it something completely different? We'll be back again next week to check in on this weekend's box office. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. And until I see you then, be good to yourself, be kind to others, and Merry Christmas.